Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Going nuCLEar, full-blown coverage of the land. I am Ethan Greenberg, and tonight I am joined by the OG co-founder of Going nuCLEar, Madison Delaney, jumping in tonight. We appreciate her being here, and we've got special guest, head coach of the Kent State women's soccer team, Rob Marinero. Rob, thank you for joining us. Madison, thank you very much for stepping in tonight. Appreciate it. Glad to have you back in the saddle.
Of course, it's good to be back. I'm happy to pop in every so often when there's something worthwhile to talk about.
And this is worthwhile. This is definitely worthwhile. So, Rob, you've got a lot of things going on. It's, as a Kent State soccer coach, you have been there since the inception of the program in 1997, an assistant to head coach Colleen Markham. How much has the Kent State soccer program grown in that time?
It's absolutely amazing. I still in contact with some of the players that were our OGs, as you like to say. And they come to games and stuff, and they're just absolutely amazed that the difference, especially in how fast women's soccer has grown. But collegiate athletics has a completely different look, and it continues to change every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I had the pleasure of covering the women's team in 99 and in 2000 while I was working for the Daily Kent Stater, got to see the first glimpses, of success there with Mia Quintanilla, Kelly Haggard, and Nikki Downey, Annie Olshansky. That was a special group.
Well done, man. That's impressive.
I try to remember these things. As I was taking my walk today, I'm like, okay, who was on? No,
Do you have notes down there? Because that was good. That was really good.
I do not have notes down here on that. Like I said, I took a walk this afternoon and started thinking about some of the players, like Tisha Villasenor, and I'm still friends and keep in touch with Gina Malik.
Wow, yeah. Down in Carolinas.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. So, yeah, it's been a long while here. So you started out as an assistant there, and first of all, how did you end up at Kent State?
That's a great story, and it ties into probably some of the stuff we're going to talk about. But at the time, I was playing with the Cleveland Crunch indoor, and I came to one of the practices, and Kia comes in and is like, "Hey, do you have any interest in coaching college soccer?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, absolutely! I would love that. That would be, something that I've always thought about, and from my entire family, my dad was a coach, a general manager, the whole bit. So it's in the blood." And when he said that, I was like, absolutely. What's going on? Kent State starting a women's soccer program. I met the head coach last night because he owned a sporting goods store, and she was looking for somebody to sell soccer stuff to him. And soccer specific store, which Kia had at the time in North Canton. Anyways, he was like, "Yeah, you give this lady a call," and it was Colleen Markham, of course. And we got on the phone. I think it was like 2 days before the job was going to close, right? So she was like, "Yeah, you need to get your stuff in like today." So I had to put a resume. I was a soccer player. I didn't have a resume. I didn't have anything. So we're like throwing this together. Thank God my wife is really good at that kind of stuff, and she helped me piece it all together. And then like a week later, I was down there interviewing. So it was like bam, bam, and it was pretty awesome.
That is amazing. Madison, I'm sure you could share tales of your coaching, your coaching history.
Didn't quite go the same way as that, but it did work out. I ended up interviewing with head coach at Averett, which is a D3 down in Virginia, who I was also interviewing with her alma mater for their GA position. Mm-hmm. So I was doing both, and she was like, "I had to hire you before my head coach hired you." So that's really my claim to fame, I guess, is that I had 2 interviews with similar people that were definitely talking, and she was like, "I got to get her first." So worked out, and now we're still friends, so it's all good.
That's the way it goes. That's awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now you've had, again, so 22 seasons in the books as the head coach.
Really?
At Kent State.
I'm old, man.
Hey, I'm old too, so I feel it every day, and when I try and wake up, it's no good. So you've got an impressive resume. When you look at it, I a 3-time MAC Conference Coach of the Year. The MAC is a tough conference. You've got some stiff competition there. You've won 200 games in your 22 seasons. You're the second most wins in conference history head coach. That's pretty impressive. Got 1 MAC championship, 3 MAC regular season titles, 3 MAC East Division titles. Where do you think Kent State is in relation to the rest of the conference?
Yeah, with the years that I've been there, the parity in the conference is just so strong. And anybody that follows how many times and it's changed, but the 8th seed beating the 1st seed in the tournament is like, it's not uncommon. It happens all the time. So that shows you the parity. It shows you how hard it is to win. Of course, I'm making excuses because we have 1 MAC championship, but I always tell people how much harder it is to win the regular season, since that's 12 games versus winning 3 in the tournament. We've been fortunate enough to make it to the finals, but unfortunately we've lost. So we should have more MAC championships. I think we have done a really good job of putting ourselves into making playoffs and then giving ourselves the best opportunity to take care of business in the playoffs. Unfortunately, that hasn't always been super successful, but regular season, I think, with MAC East and there is no longer MAC East, so that kind of takes away that trophy. So now it's just regular season and tournament. But yeah, like you said, the parity is really strong. It's quite amazing. Like when we go play other MAC schools, we know almost all the other players because we tried to recruit them. You know what I mean? It's like we're all recruiting the same kids. You go to a game and it's like, I went to a game in Medina and it was like, 4 other MAC schools. I'm like, you can't get away from people. It's amazing. We're on top of each other. So, yeah, try to separate ourselves. That's why we've gone into Canada a little bit more. It doesn't hurt. I'm Canadian, and we have Jenna Hellstrom to sell from the Canadian national team that's on our staff, and our associate head coach Rocky is also a Canadian. So we've kind of built and have a lot of ties in that area. So that's been really important for us.
Yeah, I'm just looking here as you and I were chatting a little while ago, Rob, about the incoming recruits. You've got 9 of them, a large class for the fall. And you've got folks, New Jersey, Ohio, Ontario, Toronto, and what is it? Oakville.
Yeah.
Oakville and Vaughan. Yeah. 3 players from Canada, a player from Illinois, and then you're bringing in, like you said, not directly, but transfers. You've got the Helen from Bremen, Germany, and is it Kate Thill? If my eyes are failing me, my old age here, from Gotzigen, Luxembourg.
Sure, man, you said it. I know them. They've come in to visit, but I don't know how to pronounce any of it. I'm glad that you're doing that piece of it, so I don't look like I don't know what I'm.
Yeah, so just let me. I'll come in. I'll be the the one who bungles it up so that I can act dumb and they'll be like, "Oh, that's how you pronounce it." And
yeah, then, and I'm the one who's supposed to know because I'm going to be the coach. So thank you for taking care of that for me.
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of the competition and the recruiting battle, as you said, everybody is there. Everybody knows each other and they're all vying for some of the, the same players. One of the things that's changed in college athletics is the name, image, likeness, the transfer portal. How is that affecting Kent State? How is it affecting college women's soccer in general?
Women's soccer, not a huge amount, though there are some of the bigger programs. If you look at SEC, some of the top ACC schools, now everybody, I was going to say Pac-10 or Pac-12, but that's not even a conference anymore. Like they're now between Big Ten and SEC and ACC. But, it's those schools that have it in such abundance for football and basketball that they start passing on, and you get the trickle down effect for sports like women's soccer. And it's starting to make waves, because you can see some of those schools. For example, a buddy of mine is at Kentucky, and he's like, yeah, I mean, we just have this allotment of money that, we can throw on top of scholarships. If it's somebody and we don't have scholarship money, we're putting that money towards it. So it's definitely a huge advantage. We haven't had that experience quite yet at Kent State, though we're seeing it in other sports. Men's basketball is making a big push. Football is making a big push. But that's the world they live in. So if it's affecting us a little bit, you can't imagine, what it's doing to those sports. So that's changing completely the dynamic of college athletics as we used to know it. I mean, even people like Nick Saban are leaving it, because it's like, it's just not the way it used to be. We used to have people that played for the passion of it and those kind of things. And, and now they're going to the highest bidder. And, the other side of it is like, well, Nick Saban, you were making $8 million a year. It's really hard to hear that from you. And an alum, so I'm not speaking bad about Nick Saban by any means, but that's the other side, is like, all the schools are making all this money, and these student athletes are just there for a scholarship, which can be argued on both sides, and you can see it from both sides. But I got into it because I wanted to impact young people's lives and be the mentor and help them prepare for professional life, whether it's on the field or in the office or wherever it might be. And that has changed, right? And luckily I still have the passion for the game, and that's still a part of my job. I'm not dealing with paying players or anything like that, because I don't know if I want to be a part of that for the future either.
Yeah, it certainly creates its challenges. It's there's good. They take the good, you take the bad, you take them all in there. You have the facts of life.
I used to watch that one.
That was a great show.
Hopefully you have a lot of old people listening to this, because
I hope
no one else
yeah.
caught that, buddy.
Well, Madison, you played college athletics and stuff, and being a part of it and around it, what are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts specifically about NIL and then the transfer portal, and how that might impact things, or might have impacted things for you?
Yeah, I think, I'm looking at it a little bit from a basketball perspective, and obviously this was like a banner year for women's basketball on the NIL front, really in general. Like, the tournament was going on, and you would get, a Caitlin Clark commercial, followed by an Angel Reese commercial, followed by a Juju Watkins commercial. And I think that has helped elevate the game a pretty significant amount for at least women's basketball. And I was talking with Ethan a little bit about it before, and how different it is for soccer, because they go pro so much earlier when they're really top quality. And you don't necessarily have the same thing in women's basketball. They have to stay in college for, I think, 3 years or a certain age limit, whatever it is. And that really can impact it. Like, we've, the Courage, I know, has like a 16-year-old on their team, and it's like stuff like that is happening, and that kind of takes away from it a little bit. I think on the women's soccer side. So I was really kind of interested also with the transfer portal. Obviously that's been a big thing in women's basketball too right now, especially with the Pac-12 dissolving, as you saw a lot of Pac-12 players transfer. Stanford, obviously, when Vanderveer retired, everybody kind of went their own way, didn't want to do the travel involved with their new conference. Most of them just hopped down the road to stay at USC and stay in Southern Cal. But my question with like the transfer portal is if you feel like you have to like recruit your own kids year after year, and what that looks like, because that wasn't really a thing when I was playing, and it wasn't quite a thing when I was coaching. But it feels like you pretty much have to do that at this point.
You absolutely have to do it now, and it's just a new fold to the recruiting process. And I wrote this note because I do a recruiting seminar with our ID camps and those kind of things. Last year it was about the same, but this year a total of 2,300 student athletes in women's soccer alone were on the transfer portal.
Wow!
It opened up yesterday or this morning. and already 250 new names are on the transfer portal today. So that is just the impact that is just, again, it's going away from, college athletics the way we used to know it. And there are some good, where you're not in a good situation, you can move out of that situation, but then you have some college coaches where it's like, hey, you're not really cutting it right now. Jump you on the transfer portal. Let's find you a new place. Which could be good and bad. I mean, I don't think that the coaches should just take that lightly, but at least it gives that student athlete an opportunity to move to another school and still compete. But now NCAA just changed a new rule, is like you can transfer as many times as you want. As long as you're eligible, you can. So you know what? Just move. You're not happy, go somewhere else, right? So it's changing the dynamics. I don't really like it from the standpoint of, I've always been big on, find a way to be successful. The grass isn't greener somewhere else just because you move. It's, the saying, grass is always greener where you water it. So that's the problem. Like it's some kids aren't even waiting around for that opportunity. It's, I don't necessarily want to work for it. Let me move somewhere else because it'll be given to me. And there's some of that, so there's so many hands in that pot and so many different reasons why a young lady or any student athlete just jumps on the portal. And the other bigger sports, like, and we've seen it with our football program, especially when we lost Coach Lewis, they went on the transfer portal. And of course, I'm hearing this third, fourth hand, but guys were getting, 6-figure offers to go. And I think it was our top receiver. I don't remember his name, but it was like between Penn State and Georgia. And I heard like $250,000 is what Penn State, he ended up going to Penn State. That's what Penn State was offering them. So, and unfortunately he was back on the transfer portal this year. So it's a mighty web that we're weaving right now. It's not always a great thing.
Does it change how you use red shirts? I don't know if you maybe were doing this, but like when my sister played at Charlotte, she redshirted her freshman year, didn't get a ton of playing time, eventually worked her way up. And it's kind of interesting to think about now. I mean, she would have stayed because that's her personality, but like if you're getting red shirt and you're basically a practice cone, for your first year, does that move you into the portal faster? And do you consider that before you try to leverage a red shirt?
For us making that decision or the player making the decision?
I don't know if you guys don't do it the same way. Charlotte would put red shirts on people when they weren't injured.
Yeah. I mean, well, especially for injury, right? Like if you're not capable of playing, then there's the medical red shirt. But
right,
the red shirt that most listeners know is, you don't play your first year, especially in football. And not that that's always the case, but you're not quite ready. We need to build you. And then, you still have 4 years of eligibility and you're a little bit older, which could be a great thing. In women's sports, I mean, it's not such a big jump from club or where they're playing at a high school to come and play a freshman year. The game's faster and those kind of things. But a woman is pretty mature physically at that point, right? So there's not a ton of red shirts because of that. Like, football, let's get you some weights. Let's get you get you weighing more and stronger and all those kind of things. And now all of a sudden, now you go in and you start playing with men where, women are pretty fully grown and at their peak pretty early. So, we don't use it a great deal. But you're right. I mean, now you got to be careful, right? You redshirt somebody and now they have 4 years to go somewhere else and play. So if you're not doing things the right way or you're not treating them right or, so now it's like not that you second guess things. I've always just stayed true to me and I'm going to coach the way I coach. And I always like to think that we're producing something that's special. And if you want to go somewhere else, then, you can live and learn.
And so I was going to ask you kind of, building upon Madison's question and talking about we're talking about the transfer portal just in general. And I want your opinion on this because maybe I'm too old for this, get off my lawn guy. But I feel like the idea of I'm going to just jump ship to, going along with that. Is it really, the grass greener on the other side, type of thing? Where's the loyalty? Where is the idea that you stick with something even when it's hard? Is this in fact kind of feeding into the idea that if I don't like a situation, I'm just going to leave it and not work harder to get to the top?
Yeah, I mean, us old guys, we look at things, this generation's a mess, right? And it's like, yeah, but it's a little bit of just the world we live in now. And I like to think that I'm with a special group of women who, want to do things the right way. And, but sometimes, and we've had, people transfer out, and, that's okay. I mean, again, they have to make those decisions, and we have to just try and produce the best environment we can. But I think you're right. And we're seeing it in youth sports. I think we're seeing it way before we even get to college is, how many, and for basketball, the AAU, for soccer, it's ECNL and Girls Academy, where, wait, wasn't this young woman on this team and now she's here? And, well, why did you leave here? And it was like, well, I thought this happened. You know what I mean? So it's, everybody's just trying to position themselves for the best scenario. And you're right, where sometimes it's like, well, maybe you're in the right scenario. Maybe if you just work harder and you produce, you'll come out, a lot better morally, ethically, and producing something that you can carry for self-esteem moving into the professional world. But you're seeing it in the professional world too. Like people can't keep employees because, hey, I'm going on to my next job and I move here and I move there. And I hear it all the time because you've been where for 22 years? That never happens. So, we're going to be put out to the pasture pretty soon because it's everybody and baking and moving, man. Because, they got to find the best situation for themselves. And, it is what it is. And, we're dealing with it, and it's different. But, for some, they're making the most of it. For some, they're doing it for the wrong reasons. But, we can go past history and say that about a lot of different things.
Right. It's always easier to look in hindsight, being 2020 and such. So I know that, college athletics, colleges around the country, there's issues with budgets. How is that impacting Kent State from the athletics perspective, and being able to have top-notch facilities and such for your players to attract them there?
Well, first, it's hitting universities and colleges in general. And right. I think that's where the trickle-down effect's going into athletics because, the population out there of people going into college is a lot less, only because of the population, not because they're not choosing to go to university or college. The population after the baby boomers and all of that, the population going in is less. So now enrollment is dropping. So the less money schools are making, then the less they're funding athletics. And Kent State lives on, the university to help fund us and all our programs where, the Ohio States of the world and them, they're funding themselves. So it is different and it is changing, but, and I have to say this, and I'm not saying this just because your dad is a men's soccer alum, but, the way people give back and the way that they're seeing things and helping, the next generation or the youth people get different experiences than what they had. We have a men's soccer alum base that is just absolutely amazing, and they give back to us, and they've helped us fund a lot of things. Last year, we went out to Arizona. We played Arizona State. And those are kind of things that we wouldn't be doing. We're upgrading. We wear heart rate monitors. I mean, that's funded by the men's soccer program. We have Speedio cameras, which are just cameras that are built into the stadium, which we share the soccer stadium with the football team, is the way I say it. The football team will say it completely different. But, and we have this technology to break down videotapes, and we send it out, and 24 hours later it's sliced and and our players can come in and press a button and watch every highlight of every time they touch the soccer ball or every time they were a part of a play. And those are things that you're trying to keep because that keeps you competitive, and it can, helps your team grow and learn and all those kind of things. But, without that kind of support, it becomes even harder to fund, and that's where I think we've stayed very competitive because of the support that we are getting.
And you do, as we mentioned, or as I mentioned, you are drawing people from a variety of places, recruits. How much more challenging is it playing in Northeast Ohio than it is that you're a Clemson alum, playing down somewhere south where the weather's a little bit more favorable?
Yeah.
What kind of challenge does that present, if at all?
Yeah, that's why we go to Canada. Herb Page, our amazing old golf coach, used to say, like, listen, go to Canada. You tell them that they're coming south to play. So we do. And that's why we have a lot of Canadians. But geographically, it definitely, presents a challenge. I mean, we don't get a lot of kids from the South because there are so many schools down south. And women's soccer, almost every program in the country at the Division I level has women's soccer. So, you're now not only competing numbers, but the bigger schools, the well-funded schools, and we're funded well. I don't want to say that, but the challenges of, like, I'm going to go play south so I can be outside year round, and those are the players that make those kind of decisions because they want to go pro and those kind of things, or just for the experience itself. But that's why you're seeing a lot of artificial surfaces. That's why we play on field turf, and the field turf's pretty amazing from a technological standpoint on what it used to be to what it is today. It plays so much like grass, though it's not grass. But that allows us to be outside other than, the real cold days. But, we're trying to create a lot of different things. And, those are the challenges definitely of being in Northeast Ohio.
Gotcha. So kind of moving on a little bit here, your college, your professional career, how did you end up at Clemson from Toronto?
It was so one weekend, I was actually fortunate enough to be in the Canadian national pool at the 16 age. And my dad, again, big soccer guy in the community in Toronto. My brother at the time was actually playing in Cleveland. He was playing with the Cleveland Force. And I remember that weekend, my dad, not that weekend, but during the week, my dad comes home and he's like, hey, one of the coaches told me that the Clemson guys are coming in and they're interested in finding a goalkeeper. And they're coming this weekend. I was supposed to come and see my brother play with the Force. I was like, I don't know, man. There's so much fun going to those games. I mean, they were absolutely amazing. So I really didn't even want to stay for the weekend. And my dad was like, no. I mean, you take every opportunity to show yourself, and, you never know what this opportunity can create. And then I found out that they were actually there to go see one of the other goalies. And then I was like, why am I going to waste my time? I was like, my dad's like, you never know. So I'm not going to say I was a bit of a brat when I was a kid. You might argue that I still am, but he made me stay because I didn't want to. And it goes that, Clemson actually did come and watch the other goalie play. The other goalie ended up going to Hartwick, which was another big-time program, especially back in the days. And so Clemson invited me to go visit. And, as soon as I got on, there's a highway. Once you get off the main highway and you start taking streets into Clemson, you start seeing tiger paws that lead on to Canada. Wow. I was like, man, this is pretty cool, man. I think I might have to do this. So that kind of was the start of it all. But, I was fortunate enough that, they saw me play that weekend, and they were there just once. And they were like, yeah, you did a nice job. When can we see you play again? And I was like, well, I play in another game tomorrow if you guys want to stick around. So they actually extended their trip, and they stayed the next day. And I was fortunate enough to have a good weekend and got invited to come down on a visit. And, they kept tabs on me, and fortunately, I got the offer to go down, and it was absolutely amazing experience.
That is awesome. So your freshman year, is 1987. You were lucky enough to be part of a national championship team. How amazing of an experience was that?
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I wish I was a little bit older because I mean, I was at the time, I went to Clemson when I was 17 years old. And on the weekend that we won the national championship, I turned 18. Wow. So that's how young I was. But yeah, I mean, just a tremendous experience, the atmosphere, the level of play, all those kind of things were just, something that is, I mean, special. I don't even know how to really kind of explain it. It was almost surreal because when I look back, I was like, wow, I got to do that. That was me, so yeah, really fortunate and just a tremendous experience.
That is amazing. I know in women's basketball, Madison, do you still have a piece of the net from the conference championship?
I'm sure I do somewhere. I did have my brother-in-law played soccer too, and they played in a national title game. He was a goalkeeper. Played in a national title game against Carolina and lost on a pretty questionable PK. And I'm a Carolina fan, so I'll give them credit for that. But I do love that we get the college cups every year, either the men or the women, is here in Cary. So I usually try to hop over there and catch at least a game or two.
Yeah. Clemson men won national championship again this year.
They're pretty frequently visitors of Cary. Yeah. Pretty frequently.
Let's keep that rocking. Keep that UNC. Get the blue out of there. The Carolina blue. Okay, Carolina.
Yes. We got you. What was like your of your time at Clemson, your collegiate career? Do you have a top moment, a top game that just sticks out, a play that sticks out in your memory?
I was actually fortunate enough my freshman year. I played probably more games my freshman year than I did the rest of the time I was there. But freshman year, we played in our own tournament. And Portland was there, and St. Louis was there. And that weekend, and what we look back on, it was that weekend. Well, I'm going to sound like I was the reason. I wasn't. I got to play with some amazing. Bruce Murray was on the men's national team, held the scoring record for the national team for quite a long time. He was our senior striker, right? And so really the national championship, we rode his coattails quite well because I think he scored every game except for the finals. But it was players like that. But anyways, that weekend, my parents were there. They came down. We beat St. Louis and Portland, who both were like top 10 at the time. And we beat both. So that kind of solidified. Now, I don't want to say solidified. At the very end, it solidified our opportunity to get into the tournament. But we were actually the second last team selected in the tournament. So back then, I think it was 24 teams made it or something like that. And we were one of the last teams in, and believe it or not, the other team that was behind us was San Diego State with Eric Winalda and Marcelo Boa. They ended up getting selected after us. They were the last team, and that's who we ended up playing in the finals. So it was pretty amazing that it worked out that way. But it's pretty cool because I look back, Winalda was a freshman, went on to play on the national team, and of course Marcelo Balboa also on the national team. And to say that we stole the national championship from them was pretty cool. But the coolest part was we beat UNC in the Final Four, who had beaten us twice.
Oh, wow.
UNC is actually, I think, ruined my career because in the ACC tournament, we were playing North Carolina in the first round of the ACC tournament, and I got to start that game. And we ended up losing. They scored on us with 8 seconds left in the first round. So we were like, in overtime, because I started thinking penalty shots, and I loved penalty shots as a goalkeeper. I was like, okay, man, I'm gonna send us to the next round, and we're gonna upset North Carolina. And then they got a corner and scored off a corner. I was like, oh, darn, that's not good. But after that game, that's when he turned to our fifth-year senior, Tim Genovese, and he ended up starting the rest of the tournament games. And he was amazing, and he led us all the way through with Bruce and Paul Retenis. Those guys came in and just carried us all the way to a national championship.
Wow. But amazing experience to be a part of that. And then so post college, you played 5 years indoor soccer in the NPSL for the Chicago Power, Buffalo Blizzard, Harrisburg Heat, and the Cleveland Crunch.
Mm-hmm.
What was your experience like in the playing professional indoor soccer?
I mean, it was pretty cool. I mean, I didn't hit the highest point of indoor soccer. My brother got to experience that back in the Force days, but the Crunch did really well. Like I don't want to say we averaged, but I remember a lot of times we were playing in front of 8,000-9,000 people, which was pretty cool because we were playing down at the CSU Combo Center, right? In Chicago, we played in a pretty small arena, so we got a decent crowd. It always seemed like there were a lot of people there. Buffalo, we played in the old odd,
right,
where the Sabres play, and I love that because I was an hour and a half from home, so my mom and dad got to come to a lot of games. We played in the odd, so I would walk into the odd, and you're seeing the jerseys and all that, like the hockey stuff. I'm a huge hockey fan, so that was the coolest thing to me, man. And it was amazing because just a quick stuff, like. When I was with with the Crunch the last year I played, I was with my brother's team, and we actually went and played Edmonton Oilers, or the Edmonton Drillers, but we were in the same arena, and their equipment was being delivered because I think they had just played an away game. So my brother and I snuck into their locker room, and we were like SEA, Gretzky. We were like, man, we were like two little kids in a candy store, man. We were just like. And the equipment manager was just laughing at us. He's like, "Aren't you guys playing?" And we were like, "Yeah, no, don't worry about it, man. We're good."
Oh man, the Force and the Crunch days, amazing. I remember going to the Force at the old Richfield Coliseum, and I attended the 2 of the championships in Cleveland at the Convo, and that was amazing. And it was kind of interesting. And I was going to bring this up here momentarily, but the Cleveland Crunch, the current iteration of the Cleveland Crunch in the MLIS, just defeated Omaha and won a championship.
Yeah.
I mean, how amazing is that? Is it possible? And again, I have this kind of down the line here, but the professional soccer in Cleveland, what's the vibe there, or in Northeast Ohio? I mean, you're seeing it from the collegiate perspective, but obviously you've got your hands on things here and eyes and ears. What's the vibe there?
I mean, I'm surprised, right? Like, okay, so Columbus has MLS, and we're working on things towards that here in Cleveland. But Cleveland's population, man, there are a lot of ethnical groups, and people that grew up with soccer, and there's such a passion, and just in the population of kids playing soccer is absolutely amazing here in Cleveland. So. It's unfortunate that we don't have any professional soccer. I'm sorry. Well, the Cleveland Crunch right now is kind of a semi-pro kind of gig right now. But, the guys that are running it are doing an amazing job. I mean, I think last year or 2 years ago, they lost in the finals. So to be able to do that in such a quick timing of it is pretty special. So, I know my brother was helping them out when he was around, and we went to a couple of games, and it was pretty fun. They were, just trying to get it built up and get it back going again. But, there's just so much other, challenges for them from an entertainment dollar standpoint. Like Cleveland's just got a lot of things going on, and now the Cavs are back in the playoffs and they're going. So, it's and the Browns are good now, and well, you can argue that. Not that they're not good, but making playoffs.
We have argued that.
Right? Yeah, I'm sure you guys have, right? Like, I'm a huge Browns fan, so anybody that's listening, man, don't. I bleed it just like everybody else in Cleveland, and my wife is a Cleveland lady, and we've cheered on all the Cleveland sports, and people ask me why. I love Toronto. I grew up in Toronto. The only team I really cheer for in Toronto anymore is the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I will die in those Maple Leaf jerseys. But everybody else that I support will be a Cleveland sport and that, or a Cleveland sports team. And I think Cleveland is one of the best, if not the best, sports town in the country.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I know, down there.
Yeah. So, you talked about like just the amount of kids that are involved in playing soccer, youth soccer. You're the director of coaching at the Stowe Soccer Club. Stowe being, for any listeners, who are not familiar, Stowe on the outside of Akron, the city of Akron and such. I guess what would be considered like a suburb of Akron.
Yeah, we're a suburb. I mean, we're next to Hudson. Anybody knows the area, but we're probably about 15 minutes from the Kent State campus. And but yeah, we're quite a big suburb of Cleveland. I mean, we're 40 minutes from Cleveland. We're probably about 30 minutes from Akron. So nice suburban life out this way.
It is. But how the program, the youth program, and the building up of that. This is kind of moving to my, the next things I kind of wanted to ask you about, just in general, soccer in the United States. Obviously, it's a different sport here than it is in Europe, than it is in other continents. Where do you kind of see our game developing versus, everybody else around the world?
I think right now soccer is still like a developmental sport. I think, and I talk to a lot of parents, and I want to get them into soccer because of the coordination and the feed and all of that. But then it's like to get them ready for football or get them ready for basketball, right? Because those are our major sports in this country. And people always say, like, what's it going to take for us to compete at the world level? And in order to do that is kind of what the MLS is doing, though. If you look at the salaries in the MLS, and we can bring NWSL into it. On the women's side, it's good, but on the men's side, you have, I think the minimum salary in the MLS is like 60-something thousand, and then your highest is, of course, Messi making 20 million on the books, not even all the other stuff that he's doing, right? Like they're projecting $500 million a year for that guy, right? So, but getting names like that in, then now it's becoming a little bit. But at the end of the day, for the normal American gets a kid or has a kid, and it's like kind of still the thought of the dream of football, basketball, baseball, and then where does soccer fit into that? I think we're growing, but I don't think we're quite competitive there from an attendance standpoint or a viewership, though it's getting way better and they're becoming more competitive, in the grand market. But, you just think about it as we were just even talking about Cleveland, like, to try and compete with the Cavs and the Browns, even the Guardians, like it's a tough sell, right? So that's kind of where you're seeing it. I think, the parent is, my kid's playing soccer and the growth at 5 years old, because they're not going to get into those other sports. This is kind of like a mechanical, build a sports body kind of thing. And that's where you're seeing it being used more and more, with kind of the bad kind of stigma that's coming in with football. You're seeing more kids that'll stick around because mom and dad or them don't want, the impact sport as much. And so I think we're seeing a little bit of that. But, at the end of the day, when, somebody's looking for, the path to professionalism, it's usually not the soccer route, right? At least in this country. And in every other country other than here in Canada, probably, soccer is probably the number one. So that's why you're seeing academies. I mean, it's a humongous business. If you were to put, I always say this to anybody, is like, if you were to put football and basketball together, that's what soccer is in every other country in the world. And, we have all those sports here, and we're just competing. Our population's great, but, it's still a tough sell.
Right. And along those lines, a tough sell, and you talked about the parents and getting into it. So my understanding, and Madison, you touched on this a little bit, but you talk about the really top tier players, younger players, maybe in other countries, they get involved in the academy, the under 16, the under 18, and sort of. What are we doing here in the U.S. to try and kind of compete with that, if anything at all?
Well, it start. I mean, if you want to go, it doesn't start, but the pinnacle then is MLS and NWSL, and what they're doing is trying to sell the product, right? And MLS is doing a great job, and you see some of the sponsorship they're getting, and that was kicked off the World Cup, where the women. It was kicked off the World Cup when the women actually the Olympics, when they won the Olympics out in California, and they had the Rose Bowl packed for the women's game, right? So you saw that people were willing to come out to a women's soccer game, but it just didn't catch as much as you saw. We were talking a little bit earlier about women's basketball and how women's basketball blew up probably within the last couple of years as far as viewership, where I think they were saying that the women's national championship outdrew the men's national championship for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. And those are stories, right? Those are stories of Caitlin. I'm sorry, I forgot her last name, but
Clark, yeah.
Caitlin Clark. Yeah. And I was watching it. I usually do watch it, so don't bash me on it. But I was eager to watch that national championship, and I watched a lot more games in the tournament this year, probably more than ever. And some of that actually, to be honest with you, probably comes from NIL, because you saw them in commercials and you're like, oh, that's pretty neat. There's a female basketball player. Let's go see what she's like and watch her game. You know what I mean? So it tied that in a little bit. So being able to see them in commercials, and the only reason you get to do that is because of the NIL. So it has changed. You already saw like an immediate effect of that, and that's super cool. I mean, that's so much fun. They deserve it because they put in as much time and effort, and don't get anywhere near the notoriety, at least in the past, as what you were seeing in the men's game.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're going to have to partner up with Ray's Place, maybe some Taco Tontos, get the girls down there going to the Loft Pizza. That was a heck of a deal. I think on Tuesday nights, used to get real cheap pizza while I was there. I think it was like $5, maybe $4.25 for a large pizza. Oh, not the best.
Yeah, but that college days, man, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. You could eat that leftover. Next couple of days, it was beautiful. It was definitely beautiful. So the other thing that, I'm so glad to have you on, the Canton Invaders and Cleveland Crunch coming up in just a few weeks here on May the 25th are having a reunion game. This is the 40th anniversary for the Canton Invaders, 30th for the Cleveland Crunch. That is going to be at Goodyear Hall in Akron. And all of the proceeds are going to be benefiting the Hands-On Sports Foundation. And if you need information, folks, about the event, which is coming up here again in 3 weeks, you can go to https, cantoninvaders.com. There's information there. So please look into that. If you're looking to attend, if you're a fan of the Crunch or the Invaders, talk to us about this event and how your involvement in it. Obviously, it's a pretty good looking roster here. A few more Canton Invaders players and Crunch players, but talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, more Canton Invaders guys, because it actually originated as their reunion and tied in with us, because Otto Orff got involved, and Otto Orff, for people that don't know, is a longtime Cleveland Crunch goalkeeper, a big personality around the area, and the foundation Hands-On Soccer is his, and he's going all over the world to try and help unfortunate people that and with the game, just growing the game and helping out as much as he can with that. So it's a fundraiser, and a bunch of old guys are going to try and kick a ball around, so that'll be a lot of fun. But for people that were fans of those times, I mean, the names that are coming back, you got the dynamic duo that's on your t-shirt there, Hector Marinero and Zoran Karic. With Otto Orff, probably the 3 biggest names that from the Crunch side. From the Invader side, Rudy Pikuzinski, or the Pikuzinski brothers, the D'Annunzio brothers, Kia himself, and a bunch of other real big names that have played along the way, and Marcelo Carrera, who ended up playing in the MLS and played with the Crew, and so a lot of real big names they're coming back. So again, if you've been a fan of any of those games in the past, it's just we did one. I don't know. It was probably 5 years ago. We did one with the Crunch, and it was great. The place was packed, and it was just a fun event. And for us, it really was fun because we got to see a lot of the fans that we kind of grew up with, right? And they're such diehard people, and we just have such an affection for them, and just because we wouldn't have careers without them, right? Like we wouldn't have had those fun experiences out with the great people that would buy tickets. So just another event that would be fun to see a lot of people there, and create money for the program that goes out and helps the less fortunate.
And I noticed one of your opposing goalkeepers you might be familiar with, Jamie Swanner. He is also a Clemson alum. I had no idea.
My alum brothers.
That is fantastic. Do you guys share stories about your Clemson days?
No, not at all. It's so funny because Jamie's I don't know, he's older than I am.
Right.
So it was funny because when I went on my recruiting trip, you saw Jamie Swanner's pictures all over because at the time he held all the records, right? So I was the big shot, and I was like, oh, okay, this is the guy's records. I didn't even come close. But, to see him, and then we played indoor against each other.
Right.
And we went out a couple of times where, there were a lot of social events after games, even with other teams, because it was, your team's out of town, and, it was like the out of town guys kind of hosted you a little bit. And did that a couple of times with Jamie, and we talked a little bit, but we really didn't get into the whole thing of, the Clemson days, and which is unfortunate. Maybe I'll do that this time, especially now that we're older, because, as you get older, you're more willing to reminisce about the good old days, right? So maybe I'll have to hit them up this time a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know about, Madison, I don't know about you, but that's what I'm hanging on to is the good old days.
I'm just waiting for an opportunity to ask if there are any alums from Kent State in the Raleigh area, because my adult soccer team needs some help. We don't have enough players.
Absolutely. I can throw some names your way. I don't know if they're in the Raleigh area, but we originally had some teachers that went down. And they started in the North Carolina, but I think most of them eventually moved down, and quite a few of them ended up coming back in this area as job opportunities arose. So beautiful area, but I'll let you know for sure.
We have a Clemson alum actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but a lot of Clemson guys. Yeah.
We need all the help we can get because I am too old, and when we play down 3 players, it's pretty tough on my body. I can't walk for like 3 days.
Madison, if you're too old, then I don't know if I can find anybody to help you, because we're pretty ancient at this point.
Well, Madison, you were mentioning something to me, and I know you were gonna, I want to let you ask, Rob about this, but you were asking about player health, injuries, and such. So I'd love. I'm sure Rob could answer your question, or at least provide us with some insight. Love to, let you go for it.
I don't know if anyone can really answer the question, because I think it's partly that there hasn't really been enough studies on it. But obviously, across the board, there's been a ton of ACL tears in women's soccer, right? And so what my curiosity was like, if there's anything you guys do specifically to try to prevent those, and if there is enough research available, because it seems to kind of disproportionately impact women compared to men. And I know on the national stage and professionally speaking that they've kind of hit on not having enough research. But I was just wondering if there's anything you guys do, sort of selfishly for my own self, but also just in general, because I think it's an interesting topic and something that I kind of wondered about.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like research, you read so many different reasons why you're experiencing those kind of things. From one being the surface that you play on, to all the way from a female aspect is the menstrual cycle. there's been plenty of research that said the majority of ACL tears happen during that time of the month for a female. So there are a lot of, I know in talking with Jenna, the national team, and I know the U.S. women's national team does this, is that they begin to track and they start looking at research on when you are and when you're not, and when those injuries are occurring. So, outside of that, you're seeing a lot more injury prevention. You're seeing women get more comfortable in the weight room, which helps because one of the major studies that you saw, especially in women that play soccer, is they become quad strong and not hamstring strong. Now that kind of distorts the leg a little bit more, and you start pulling forward a little bit more because your quad is stronger and your hamstrings not as strong. So they're seeing some of that. And nowadays with the technology and all the kind of training that you're doing, and especially at our level, we're in the weight room, and the majority of what we do is injury prevention. And the number one injury prevention, especially in women's sports, ACL. So we call it ACL prevention. So they're in there and they're working those small muscles around the knee. They're working hamstring, quads to make sure that, they got a strong proportion in their legs, but in their entire body. But if it is something to do with, femaling and the cycle and all those kind of things, then I don't know what you do at that point, right? Like, do you take a week off, a month and not play? That's, I don't know if that's able to do, but
I don't know if anyone would agree to that either.
Right, yeah, and maybe training changes a little bit. I don't know, but I think unfortunately it's still a little bit new to the research aspect of it, but it's becoming such a pandemic that sorry I used that word, we probably shouldn't say that word, but it definitely is something that every coach in the country is paying real close attention to, because the best ability is availability, and we're just seeing way too many ACL tears. I mean, it's just it's such a sad thing, and it's really hard on athletes, right?
Well, and something you brought up earlier is the fact that you guys play on field turf. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of watching football players and in the NFL, and them talk about playing on synthetic turf versus grass, and the potential for the Achilles injuries and such. Have you noticed any difference in that playing on the artificial surface?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say yes, because it's an artificial surface, but I want to say, and this is probably within the last 2 or 3 years, we had 2 do it on grass, So I don't know if it was, their body got used to playing on turf and now we're playing on grass, but and the worst part of it all is most are non-contact, the getting caught trying to turn, or your body's going one way and your leg doesn't go that way, or whatever it might be, and all of a sudden you have a torn ACL, and it's devastating that it's that easy, and it's just, as we begin that research, not begin research, but as we begin to dive even more into those kind of things that we're seeing, and hopefully begin to prevent it. But I once heard, and I don't know how true this is, like it takes 7 pounds of pressure to tear an ACL. Don't quote me on that. That sounds just way too easy. But you do it the wrong way, and it's just the tweak, and you catch it the wrong way, and it's just done.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like along the lines of hitting a frame of glass in just the right spot, and that can cause it to shatter. Yep. Kind of amazing with that.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, thank you so much for joining us. Madison, thank you for being here with us tonight. Again, Rob Marinero, we appreciate you being with us, head coach of the Kent State women's soccer team. And folks, the Canton Invaders Cleveland Crunch reunion game coming up on May the 25th. That is a Friday, Memorial Day weekend. Check out cantoninvaders.com for more information on that. Rob, good luck to your Maple Leaves. May they please beat the the Bruins.
The Bruins. Oh my God, they got our number. But Madison, Ethan, thank you very much. It really was a pleasure speaking to both of you and out there, everybody. I mean, thank you, Cleveland, for being such an amazing city and great sports town.
Absolutely. And so for Rob Marinaro, for Madison Delaney, I'm Ethan Greenberg. You've been watching Going nuCLEar full-blown coverage